What's up, legends, and welcome to another Unmatched set overview. Today, I have the new Marvel Brains and Brawn set, the fifth Marvel set that we didn't know we were getting until we got it. And I, for one, am very happy with the characters they chose because She-Hulk is unironically one of my favorite MCU shows. Doctor Strange is my favorite Marvel hero that isn't a Guardian of the Galaxy. And Spider-Man is Spider-Man, and everyone loves Spider-Man. So, this set just has some of the biggest names. I thought for King and Country had, the biggest appeal, but I think Brains and Brawn takes the cake. So they definitely did not save the least set for last. Weird way to say that. This set is available for order right now. I'm recording this earlier, but right now, if you're watching this when the video came out, it is June 15th, and you can order the set. There will be a link at the top of my description where you can go to Restoration Games website and buy the set. That's usually the fastest way to actually get the set versus ordering it from a different website. And there are just a couple things I want to clarify. So I'm not sponsored by Restoration Games, just journalistic integrity. And I'm not being paid to make this video. Due to some recent events in the online board gaming community, I just wanted to clear that up. I definitely didn't dislike the set, then email them saying that if they paid me close to $8,000, I could change my mind about that and give them some positive videos instead. No, this is just me. They sent me the set for free, and everything else is in my hands. So I love throwing around the term journalistic integrity, but I'm not a journalist. But I do have integrity. That's the whole point of this thing. And in terms of overview versus review, I feel very biased. I don't like reviewing Unmatched because I love Unmatched. It is my favorite game. I love the system. I love the company and all the people that make it. And I'm basically going to enjoy whatever they put out. They haven't really made any actively bad sets. You could make an argument for the Buffy set, maybe, but generally all their sets are great. And it's kind of a thing where there's no point in reviewing it necessarily, because if you're like me, you're just gonna keep buying them and you're gonna keep having fun with them. And if you're sick of Marvel or you don't really like Unmatched, you're probably the best judge as to tell whether or not this is for you. In terms of my actual critical review of this set, while there aren't any new groundbreaking mechanical elements that have been added in some of the other Marvel sets, I think the characters here are unique and add some new solid ideas to the game that kind of justifies their existence. And the art is amazing. They have 3 different artists for each of the heroes, and it just as it's unmatched. High quality product, and you're probably going to enjoy it if you love the game. So, with all that out of the way, let's start giving my overview of the set. Obviously, the set comes with Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and She-Hulk. The map for this set is Sanctum Sanctorum, which, if we give it a little look-see, I realized, oh, you can still see me over here. Hi. I realized on Vorpal, instead of just holding spacebar, you can click something and hit Z, and then I can use my hands for other stuff, although it does block my beautiful face from the camera, but you can see the bottom of my Deadpool art on the wall. This map is interesting for a number of reasons. I can't decide if it's a big map or a small map, just because I think the distance between the first and second player starting spaces is pretty big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 spaces away. And that's kind of a lot for some fighters. They're starting out pretty far away from each other. I do like the spread of items. There are some Marvel maps where player 2 just starts in control of one of the items. or like player one can literally just like maneuver onto one. This, at least player one probably has to maneuver boost or just put a sidekick over there, and they're generally spread out. The other thing to notice about this map is I think it'll be decently ranged favored, and I say that just because it has the Sherwood effect where all of the zones blend into each other. There are no hard cutoffs. So, for example, Medusa standing in any space on the map, you wouldn't be able to make a melee attack against her, and if you don't have any other movement effect, get out of her zone by the end of the turn. Which, I mean, those maps aren't necessarily the best thing in the world, but it does have an implication in this set due to She-Hulk and also the wizards of, I almost said Waverly Place, of the Sanctum Sanctorum are both ranged as well. So it has some neat things there. And also I think this is like probably like the most obvious location they could have picked, given like Doctor Strange. Maybe could have been like the Daily Bugle for Spider-Man, or like the Superhuman Law Division for She-Hulk, but I was about to say this is probably the most iconic location, but maybe the Spider-Man one beats it out, just because like Spider-Man is probably the most popular superhero in the world. Let's take a look at the items. We have an axe. An axe. We have a dictionary. A dictionary that has the same power as the axe. And then the +2 item is Dragon Fang, and I'm sure these mean something to you if you've read the comics, but I just see an axe, a book, and a golden sword. I like that there's 1 +2 and 2 +1s. I think the other distribution is a little bit, it just skews it more towards the fighters that like items. And the scheme token, speaking of the Daily Bugle. The Daily Bugle. It says, draw 3 cards, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. So this reminds me a lot of Secret Documents from way back in the first Marvel set, Redemption Row, on the raft, where you get to draw 3 cards. And I love that item token. Mostly because I love playing aggressive characters that love card draw, and this is even better since you don't have to discard your hand to do it. And putting a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck can be bad, but it's kind of like the Dr. Jekyll calming research, where you're just like stashing something for later in the game, which, let's face it, sometimes can lose you the game, but at least with the Daily Bugle, you get to choose from your entire hand, not just the 3 cards you just drew. I love this scheme just because it fits my playstyle, and probably won't get used every game, but that's fine. Astral Ring. Astral Ring. I call this this scheme token Command the Drizzle, just because it's kind of like Arthur's Command the Storms, which moves each fighter up to 3 spaces, except this is just 1, so it's just like a little mini move. You're just like nudging the fighters across the map, and that's like, it's not super game breaking, but I don't know, you can just do some cool things. If you're like 3 spaces away from someone, you can move yourself 1 space, move them 1 space, and voila, now you're adjacent to them. Well, you could probably just like maneuver and hit them, although it will be interesting to like kind of mess with your opponent's positioning, although it is only 1 space per fighter, so it's like not too groundbreaking. It's interesting, I just don't think it's like necessarily super powerful. Is a pass though. And we have the, oh boy, Brazier of Bomb Goliath. Please tell me how to pronounce that in the comics, or the comments. I'm sure Bomb Goliath or Bomby Galley, whoever this is, probably wants his cauldron back. But this is probably like the most powerful scheme token in this set. You get to play a scheme from your deck as a free action. So it's not like this entire event is a free action. You're still using an action to play, to reach into the mystical cauldron. But then, like, when you're actually playing the scheme that you play with this scheme, that doesn't cost an action. So this can be very, very powerful for certain decks. I'm still over here. That that like want to play their key schemes. Like Sun Wukong is probably the name that comes to mind, because you can just camp this, wait till you have 3 clones, and then tutor out your Phoenix form, and like that just kind of like solves one of your lose conditions. Other fighters as well can make great use of this depending on what the situation is. I think red can do some sneaky stuff with Never Leave the Path based on what her opponent's positioning is around the zone that the item is in. Like Yananga using a well-timed one with the land. Just anyone that like wants to use a specific scheme at a certain moment, but like may not always draw it during games when they have it, it'll be really interesting for them. So and then there's just like other fighters that like will have a use for it, like say Black Widow can tutor out her missions depending on whatever condition is fulfilled, which is just nasty when you think about it. Although none of the starting spaces ones will work, unless no, because if like Black Widow's on a starting space and Maria plays the scheme, Maria can't play the scheme with this because it's a Black Widow card. I don't know. I'll have to think more about how that works. But like Medusa can just like momentary glance you when you're just like in her zone, and she can just find it, and like it doesn't. Like, it's just things like that. Like every fighter basically has a use for this, except for Buffy Xander, who doesn't have any schemes at all. And like I said, it will be more useful for some fighters than others. So interesting map. I think the items are slightly mundane as Marvel items go, but that is perfectly fine in my book, because the more game-changing items change games, and sometimes that hurts someone's feelings, usually mine. So now I'll just give you like a brief overview of the fighters. Let's call upon the winds of Watum to blow us away. Okay, that was pretty cool. You gotta give me some credit for that. That looked neat AF. Spider-Man. I know there was like a little bit of debate around this mini, but I actually think it's cool just because like he's like shooting the ground, pulling himself in to punch you in the face, and I think that's more cooler than just him in like the Spider-Man pose. They could have done something like Bloody Mary where the mini is just a wall and he's like on the wall, but I think this is an interesting direction to go into. And of course his card back is just his face with the spider sense. And one detail that I absolutely love is that if you look into his eyes like Dracula, you can see the reflection of the city in the eyes. And I just think that's such a neat detail, that icing on the cake. Spider-Man's ability. Well, let's talk about his statistics first. He's a melee fighter with 15 health, move value of 3, and his quote is, "It's easy to laugh in the face of danger when you don't take anything too seriously." I'm just afraid this is going to become another Hat Chowder copy pasta, but anyways, Spider-Man's ability is Spidey Sense. I feel like that one's a little obvious, but what it does may not be. So let's read on. When an opponent attacks Spider-Man, before you play a defense card, they must tell you the printed value of their card. This is probably one of the most game-breaking abilities in the entire game, because one thing that I always say is that the combat mind games are the best part of the game. And Spider-Man just kind of eliminates the mind game part of that, because he just he doesn't know, but he has a really good idea of what card the opponent is actually attacking him with. The example I have of a character that gets screwed up the most by this is Wukong, because if he plays Jingu Bang, it's a 0, Spider-Man just takes it. If he says 7, Spider-Man knows the Ox is coming, and then a variety of like 2s and 3s, but just that whole mind game doesn't exist for Spider-Man. He knows when Dracula's beast form is coming. He knows when you're playing Regroup. He may not know when Medusa's playing Gaze of Stone, but it's either a feint or a Gaze of Stone, and like he just won't die because of that, like getting gazed, unless he just doesn't have any defense cards in his hand. But he has a ton of versatile, so that shouldn't happen. But yeah, this is insane. There are some fighters like Sinbad and Bruce Lee that have a lot of cards that have the same value. I think Little Red probably can get thrown in there. And so this ability will be a lot less helpful for them because it's like, oh, Sinbad's playing a 2. Wonder what I can do about this, because something interesting to know is that Spider-Man doesn't have any feints, which is part of like the balancing act of this ability, because if he had feints and he knew yeah. So let's take some looks at Spider-Man's cards. He has Swinging Kick, which is a 6 value attack with text. What is going on here? It says, after combat, move the opposing fighter a number of spaces up to the amount of combat damage dealt. So if you play this into an opponent's 3, you get to move them 3 spaces. That is a hefty kick. If this goes unblocked, you can move them 6 spaces and basically just put them wherever you want. And because you're moving the opposing fighter, remember you move them according to their movement rules. So like you can move them Invisible Man through fog and things like that. And yeah, this is a log, but better. Not quite beast form, but still an insane card. Another like Spidey Sense card, Spider Sense Tingling. It's a 2 value versatile. It says, after combat, if the value of your opponent's card is 4 or higher, draw 2 cards. So I love how this connects with the ability. Really makes it feel thematic. Like you're getting the squiggles above your head and you're like, oh, I know what's coming, and you're able to react and benefit from it in some way. Just love that piece of design there. And it's just, if your opponent's playing a card that's 4 or higher, draw 2 cards. And that is like a common threshold Spider-Man has, is 4 or higher. And while this card may not be like the best thing in the world, because you're going to take at least 2 damage, drawing cards is nice. And key thing to note, it says the value of your opponent's card, not the printed value. So like if Sinbad plays a Voyage that's buffed up, this will still trigger because it's value, which will be the during combat with all the additives and stuff, not printed value. The next card is Web Shooters. Also, like, makes sense that he would have this. It's a 3 value block, and it says, during combat, Spider-Man cannot take more than 2 combat damage this combat. So this is a really solid defense card that just kind of caps your damage at 2. So if your opponent plays Forever Hide, they can pump it up with a bunch of Jekyll cards, but you'll still only take 2 damage, which is just like a great way to like kind of neuter your opponent's big, potentially game-ending attacks. Like Beast Form, you're only taking 2 damage, which is absolutely amazing that it kind of cripples some of the best cards in the game. That being said, though, like your block options elsewhere are like slightly less good, and you have no feints, so I do think it all balances out in the end. And then we have Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. You know, some of these card names just write themselves. Justin, I don't think, had to dig too deep for these characters. And it's just a scheme. It says, recover 3 health, place Spider-Man in any space in his zone. So with 2 copies of these, Spider-Man will have 21 total health if he finds and plays both copies of these. Love the love the art. It's just so wholesome. And place Spider-Man in any space in his zone. So he does have like a decent number of movement effects, decent amount of draw, and some interesting like combat interactions with his ability. I would say he feels like Spider-Man, which all the characters generally feel like themselves, but I I like the way his kit like fits around him as a character. What I think about the ability, that's like a topic for a different video, but yeah, we'll come back to that. So Spider-Man is pretty cool. Doctor Strange. I am going to be very biased during this section because, like I said, Doctor Strange is my favorite non-Guardian of the Galaxy Marvel character. So Doctor Strange is likely probably one of my new top 3 favorite fighters. Cool mini. He's like hovering, thinking. Kind of reminds me of Infinity War when he's thinking about the possibilities. I got cloak vibes from this mini, which is not hard to do because there's a cloak, it's a blue base, and there's like stuff billowing out. So yeah, card back, one of my favorites. I love the use of color that this character has. It's just beautiful. And this is the point of the video where I would like to kind of shout out my friend Palm, who blew my mind the other day and told me that the MCU Infinity Stones and the comic Infinity Stones are not the same color. And I believe he said the Time Stone is actually yellow in the comics, which is why it's like this. So that's good to know. Yeah, Doctor Strange. Ranged 14 health, Wong ranged 6 health. Makes sense, move 2. His ability, Dark Pact. After each combat, if Doctor Strange played a card, you may deal 1 damage to him. If you do, put that card on the bottom of your deck and draw 1 card. So this is like Dracula's ability, but for yourself with recursion. And I absolutely love this ability because when I'm playing Unmatched, my least favorite part of the game is that I can only play my favorite cards so many times. Well, with Doctor Strange, now I can make a Dark Pact with an evil eldritch entity, and I can get my cards back forever, just at the cost of a little bit of health, which 14 health isn't a lot, but side note, love that they made the Eye of Agamotto his health dial like that. It just makes sense. And then we got Wongers over here, and he's doing some stuff. Yeah, so far, so good for this character. We have the Winds of Watum, which helped me transition over during this video, so thank you for that. 4 value Doctor Strange attack, 3 copies. After combat, your opponent places Doctor Strange in a starting space. Place the opposing fighter in another starting space. All players shuffle their decks. So when I was thinking about what 4 cards to include for each character here, it was kind of difficult for Doctor Strange because he just has so many like iconic cards. And this effect is like kind of mundane. It's just like an interesting movement effect. I'm assuming when it says starting space, it means like any starting spot. So if you're playing a 2-player game on a 4-player map, I would assume you could put them in 3 and 4, but I'm not actually too sure about that. Like if it's starting space or like space where someone actually started the game. On 2-player maps, that will be a lot. There's no question there, but maybe just an official ruling would be nice. But the main reason why this card I wanted to highlight is because all players shuffle their decks, which normally doesn't do anything, really, because your deck is already shuffled. But for Doctor Strange, you're putting cards on the bottom of your deck. Like we talked about earlier with the Bugle, when a card goes on the bottom of your deck, you're not really going to see it until the end of the game, unless your deck gets shuffled and the bottom is no longer the bottom. So Winds of Watum allows you to actually see the cards that you are putting back a lot sooner, which can be clutch in certain moments of the game. One other thing I want to point out with the ability that I always kind of forget, I was playing a couple games as Doctor Strange where I was using my ability and like the first 2 times I used it, I forgot to draw a card back with it. And I was just like, yeah, I'm dealing damage putting the card on the bottom of my deck. The draw part makes this amazing because you can play Doctor Strange super aggressively. You can play attacks, then use the ability, and your hand size doesn't go down. I just love this character. Mists of Manipur. This card is insane. It's a 2-value block immediately. Immediately. Discard your opponent's card. The card that they are attacking with. You just discard it. Get that out of here. They reveal cards from their deck until they reveal an attack or versatile card they can play. They play that card and randomly put the rest of the revealed cards on the bottom of their deck. So this just completely, basically cancels and ignores whatever card your opponent plays. It gets discarded. And then you kind of just roll the dice, and whatever card they could next attack with in their deck is what you get hit with. And I think most of the time that will be fine, and you'll probably get like a better card for you, worse card for them. There will be some moments where like, I don't know, you just like accidentally summon Dracula's beast form, and then, oh, you're blocking with a blank too. Which is not great, but I just, the fact that you're just getting rid of your opponent's card is crazy, and this card is really, really good against Little Red, because it'll just mess up her basket for days. One other thing to note is that you're seeing the cards that are revealed that aren't attacks, so like their schemes and blocks, and then those are going at the bottom of their deck. So you know that those won't be options that they will have coming up relatively soon. And of course, Winds of Watoomb will shuffle their deck too, which will kind of reset it, just like it resets your ability. So far, very interesting cards. It only gets better. The Rings of Ragador. After combat, if you won the combat, your fighter and each friendly fighter adjacent to them recover health equal to the damage dealt. If your opponent takes it, you're recovering 4 health. In a 2v2, when you have friendly fighters, you just plump everyone around Doctor Strange. Just and one of my favorite cards ever, the Eye of Agamotto. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 5 cards, gain 1 action. So you just play a bunch of cards and reset your hand. So yeah, Doctor Strange is very fun, has some very interesting card interactions, and a little bit of a risk reward with like the damage you take and the die roll of what attack you're getting thrown at you, but feels like a super powerful character that's like constantly riding on the edge of like chaos and absolute victory. Just perfect. And Wong is there, which is generally how my games go with Doctor Strange. And last but not least, we have She-Hulk, who, like, this scaling isn't really helping, but like the She-Hulk mini is a lot bigger than the other minis. The card back, Qui Pro Domina Justita Sequitur, which I believe means it's like who serves on behalf of Lady Justice, something like that, which is the motto of like the United States Department of Justice or something. She-Hulk's a lawyer. Love the scales, love the green and the purple. Great color scheme. And her her stat sheet is very interesting. She's melee, makes sense. She has 20 health. 20 health! 20 health! That's a lot of health. Move 2, because please. Green Gorgeous Gamma Powered Bombshell. I know that's what you're thinking. Are they describing She-Hulk or Big Mike? Who knows? And the ability is just throw something. At the start of your turn, you may discard a card to deal damage equal to its boost value to a fighter in your zone. So this was the like Medusa-esque thing I was referring to when I was talking about how the zones blending on this map are important. Because She-Hulk can throw a lot of things on this map, just like Sherwood. This is an interesting ability. I think we'll come back to it after talking about her kit. The Savage She-Hulk. It's a 3-value attack. During combat, you may spend an additional action to make this card's value 9 instead. So that's like a free max boosted Excalibur, and it just costs an extra action. So melee fighters are going to have a fun time against She-Hulk, because if they're ever kiting with disadvantage, they need a feint. And this has a boost value of 3, which is, I believe, the highest in your deck. Maybe you have one other card with a boost value of 3, but if you don't think you can get the 9 off, you can discard it at the start of your turn and just ping something in your zone for 3 damage as a free action. It's not like an action, it's an ability, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of damage going on here. Lady Justice, a 0 value block. During combat, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Increase the value of this card by twice that card's boost value. So, unless you're playing against Sinbad, this card's horrible versus Sinbad, it's going to be at least a 2, probably a 4. Sucks to offensive cancels, but not a lot of decks do that. And I think your opponents want to save their cancels. But anyways, this is a really solid card because just the average boost value around 2 in this game, deck dependent of course, but like against Yananga, this card is going to be amazing. And obviously discarding a card from your opponent's deck could be clutch if you snag that beast form. It's kind of like Moon Knight's That's the Part I Like, or like a Black Panther Vibranium Suit edition, where there's nothing your opponent can really do, and just if you get a good card, you get a good card. And so this card is, I think, great in many ways. Then we have Omega Level Threat. It's a printed 5. It says, after combat, if you dealt 2 or more combat damage, your opponent discards 2 random cards. 2 random cards! Thank goodness it has the dealt 2 damage stipulation and not just if you won the combat, because printed 5s win the combat a majority of the time. But against decks like Robin Hood and like Bruce-ish, Angel, decks that really block for 3 and that's about it. Yikes. Yeah. We have Leap Toward, which you can move She-Hulk up to 4 spaces. She may move through opposing fighters. Then, if she's adjacent to an opposing fighter, gain 1 action. So this is good as a solo move 2 character to be able to move more spaces. It also is like the primary way to set up Savage She-Hulk against characters that will not end adjacent to you. And overall, this character has some busted things and just like a bunch of discards. And she also has a ton of draw in her kit as well, which helps fuel her ability, but like Medusa, you don't want to approach her, which means sometimes that draw is like wasted a little bit. Basically where I'm going with this is, if you can win the game without approaching She-Hulk, kind of like you give her the spike treatment, then she'll never be able to use her ability, some of her cards won't work, and I don't know, hopefully this isn't another spike, but I don't think it will be, because some of her cards are just like too good to fail, almost. So basically, my final thoughts on this, my initial final thoughts, the first final thoughts I have on this set are, like all the other Marvel sets, it's fantastic. Bringing characters from the page to the stage of your table. And I can't really say this with 100% confidence because I haven't read the comics, but I feel like the characters are like good interpretations of what they're meant to be, I think. And they all definitely feel different. They play different from other characters. The art is fantastic. It's unmatched. So this was like a little sneak preview of each character, and just I probably went a little too in depth for the first video, but if you want to see more, I will have first impressions taking deeper dives into all of the characters out later today. And if you're interested in buying the set, remember the link's at the top of the description down there. So yeah, there will probably be something popping up here to tell you what to watch next. So yeah, be baked, be brains, be brawned forever. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and yay!